The reason I'm asking these questions is I think, particularly with men, and we'll come to this later on, there is a resistance to being helped because there's a fundamental deep shame that a lot of guys have about being a total failure and being weak and having to not accept help, but be the person that does, the active one, not the and help seen as a passive thing by men, if that makes sense. And we'll come and discuss that a bit more. But this dynamic of helping and being helped and learning to be a professional helper. I wonder if you want to, if anybody's got any thoughts around that, what their experience was professionally and personally. Tom?
Yeah, I'll come in. Yeah, I think what you said is so true, that I can't help effectively unless I've done the work on myself. There was lots of people that were on my course with, and this was not to down them, but hadn't had any therapy, wanted to become therapists and whatnot. And when we came to some of those sticking points of showing how you changed or how you understood yourself, they found it difficult. I mean, I found it difficult as well. And even in my infancy as a psychotherapist, getting in the way, wanting to do too much, wanting to cure people, wanting to solve problems for people rather than just being and listening with people. I think, as you said initially, it's a great distraction if you've got your own problems to be a therapist because you can focus on someone else, which on one hand is a great tool. On the other hand, it can really get in the way. And I don't know, there's something about the cyclical nature of being helped and helping, which I think is really lovely. It means that we all need each other. And if we all need each other, then we all need help at different times. And I think that's a really important thing to remember.
Yeah, so there's something there about leveling and about equalization. Yeah.
Yeah. Humility. Yeah.
Yeah, no, a nice word. Thank you. Yeah. Other people are nodding. What do you think? Just jump in, folks. Tom, yeah, Rich,
I'm happy to jump, Noel.
go.
Oh,
Just
sorry,
I need my
Richmond.
permission.
I'll
Off you
go.
go, Sherry.
Thank you. I was nodding because those that come from a nursing, background, one of the pillars in nursing is to really create trust with your patient,
Okay.
right? So when you create trust with a person, you also need to trust that that person is going to tell you their story in the best of their capabilities. So how are you going to understand the person's stories if you haven't actually made peace with your own? Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of judgment around what you hear.
Mm.
So that relationship starts when when you're being helped and you're being held and heard too. And that happens when it comes genuinely from you. Otherwise, a person doesn't really have the ability, it would have the ability, but is unlikely to have the ability unless you've thoroughly done the work yourself. And you see this in clinical practice all the time in many different sectors, as you know, Noel, not only cardiology, hardcore, um, and mental health too. You see professionals that they haven't done the work themselves. The level of compassion, empathy, and many necessary skills that a therapist may have is not there if you don't do the work with yourself, because we project what we have. So if you don't have it, how are you going to work with it?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that my degree actually helped me, my nursing degree, and that's why I was nodding.
One of the things I'm going to come, Rich and Sarah, I'm going to come to you in a second because I want you to contribute as well. Or you just tell me to get lost. You don't have anything to say on the subject, which is unlikely, but there you go. Um, Sherry, there's an experience I know you've had, and just thinking about this work, doing the work, whatever that means. I mean, it could mean different things in different modalities, but let's frame it slightly differently to working with people that need help is going to have an impact. Working with people in distress is going to have an impact. Whatever your own personal background, that's the truth. And you had an interesting experience, which many health professionals had during COVID. You had to go and work on the wards again. You were sort of shanghaied back into the NHS to go and deal with people dying of COVID. And I remember you talking about that candidly, about the PTSD symptoms that you developed from that.
Absolutely. It's a this is a topic that is very close to my heart too. So you've just touched a little, trigger, which is fine. I'm okay talking about it. But yes, it was heavily traumatic, and thank God that I was already a therapist. And I'm sure you remember that, Noel, but I developed a very short, training course for healthcare professionals to apply certain practices to regulate their own emotions. But yeah, so my training as a therapist was incredibly helpful through COVID. And many healthcare professionals are still going through, a complex PTSD. I've got no doubt about it.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
And I think the point I'm trying to make there, and again, this is about this service about wanting to help guys, is that I think that a lot of guys get into a position where they're trying to distance themselves from having this other people have this emotional impact upon them, because they feel out of their depth when it comes to processing, dealing with it. And it is something that certainly I know you saw in terms of the hierarchies of the NHS, and it's very often men in positions of power, doctors who control it, and the denial that there is in any sort of healing arrangement. There has to be reciprocity for it to actually be effective, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Noel. Yeah.
So, Sarah, Richmond, this whole notion of what is this exchange about?
Well,
Sarah.
I think doing the nursing first was informative, in as much as we did lots and lots of psychological things and sociological things, entwined. And at that time, because I was pretty black and white in my thinking, I was like, well, what? No, just tell us about conditions and physiology and all of that. So that started to sort of seep in by osmosis, because when I did sort of rehab and physio, it's all about fixing people. And of course that, well, we know the limitations of that idea. And there was no emphasis on self-care, but I just had my own natural interest in that. And I think it was the Buddhist influence that helped. So the work around compassion and gratitude and self-compassion. And so I sort of realized that I needed to create, for want of a better term, my own supervision. I needed to seek out my own mentors and guides, because there's no obligation as a physio or as a nurse to have, and particularly working independently, there's no obligation to have supervision, which I fundamentally disagree with. I think that it's really important. And I do a lot of mentoring of clinicians for that reason. So I've sort of had to sort out my own, but I just sort of consider myself lucky that I, for whatever reason, had the insight to seek that out.
Yeah. Sarah, do you want to contribute something to this part of the conversation?
Yeah, I just pick up on, the challenges in looking, or when you're working with other people, making sure that you're okay yourself, because you can't, as Tom said, help somebody else unless, you've dealt with your stuff. And I think that, in the training that you go through to get your degree as a therapist, as a psychotherapist, it's very intense. And I was almost angry that I was being forced into this position where I had to work with my own stuff.
Yeah.
And I hated my tutors for putting me in that position, even though I obviously put myself there. And I learned very quickly that actually, in wanting to rescue somebody else with whatever it is they're bringing, it's actually that I'm trying to rescue myself. So often we make interventions as just general human beings. And I think for men, one of those interventions tends to be more solution focused.
Yeah.
So when you're sat with someone who has an issue, and it might just be, I need you to hear my grievance. But for men, they often, and I'm generalizing this because women do this too, but often then men jump into this position of like, I need to fix that. And when you turn the lens back round and you say, actually, what is it that I'm trying to fix? Because it's actually me feeling uncomfortable with what you're bringing. Your presentation is making me feel very uncomfortable, and I need to rescue myself from this uncomfortability. And so therefore I'm going to try and find a solution, because if I can focus on this, it takes me away from what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And I learned that in my own process. So that's all I was gonna bring, really.
I mean, it seems to me that what everybody is talking about is that life is muddy and complicated and messy, and that whatever simplicities that we come in with, whatever clear lines that we might come in with, or even want and desire, that life comes along and says, meh, ain't going to happen.